I appreciate everybody being here this evening. We have a lot to cover. Joan, can you start us out with a roll call, please?
Charles Long, Chris Martinson,
Here.
Michael Shaw,
Here.
Priscilla Manuelito,
Here.
Kevin Mitchell.
Thank you, Joan. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
I would like to make one, make it on the 6A, the discussion and approval for lobbyist service.
Okay.
I think that we should have a work session next week and hash it out.
When we have everybody here.
Yes, when we have everybody here.
Okay. Joan, roll call, please.
Miss Manuelito,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen.
Yes. Mr. Hyatt, can we ask you to coordinate that with us maybe Thursday or Friday of next week, and we'll put something together where the five of us and including any other involved parties from the administrative side, and we can sit down and hammer this thing out and make a decision once and for all?
We'll do that, thank you.
Okay, all right. Okay, with that change, the change of 6A, do I have a motion to approve the amended agenda?
I would like to make a motion that we approve the agenda.
We did in the approval of the agenda, Mr. Shaw motion to make a work session next week.
Okay.
So it
okay.
is in the motion.
That suffices? Okay,
Yes,
great.
it's
Okay,
approved.
great, thank you. The next item of business is 3A, approval of the board minutes from August 13th, please.
No, we're gonna.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm jumping too fast here. In our agenda, we have the recognition section. We'll turn that over to Mr. Hyatt.
Mr. Mortensen, members of the board, we have a couple important recognitions this evening. I think that's why so many of us are here tonight. But we're excited about it. We got an opportunity to recognize students and our employees for the great work that they do. This evening, I know hopefully we have some families, if not the students who participated in the high school rodeo finals. We're going to start out with that. I know some of them have gone on to college. But we're gonna make sure that they get their plaque if they're not here, and if they are here, we'll be calling them up. And if the board could come up to the front while we recognize these individuals.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. We do have a couple of athletic awards that we would like to give out for some outstanding young individuals who, like we always like to say, not only represented their schools, but represented our communities, some outstanding achievements. I'm not sure if two of them are here because they did go off to college, both received rodeo scholarships, which is a great thing. If they are, though, we're going to ask that they please come up and get some recognition. First and foremost, representing Tohatchee High School and making it to the National High School Rodeo Association Finals. In calf roping, we had Hayo Yazi. We'll make sure that they get their awards. Also representing Tohatchee High School, making it to the 2018 National High School Rodeo Association Finals. In steer wrestling, we had Rooster Yazi. Again, we know that they're off in college, so we'll make sure that the families do get their awards. Last but definitely not least, representing Crown Point High School, and he made it to the 2018 National High Schools Rodeo Association Finals in team roping and steer wrestling. And if I'm not mistaken, he has qualified for the National Navajo Rodeo Finals. From representing Crown Point High School, we have Matthew Jody. Great job.
That's fine. Oh, we go. Yeah, we're going to have you stay there. We have hopefully 100 people here that are going to shake your hands also. We are really excited for this evening. We'll be spending the whole fall semester recognizing employees and recognizing schools and recognizing students for their achievements this past year on the state assessment and school grades. And this evening, there's going to be a few of us talk a little bit about the award that's going to be given this evening. But we have 4 schools here, 4 of which had 15 or more point increases on their school grade, which is a big accomplishment. To be able to do that, we've never had that many schools in the district grow that much. We think we've had 2, maybe 3, this year actually 4 schools that accomplished that task. And the state of New Mexico, actually, we were able to apply for 2 or 3 years for funds to reward staff, all staff of a particular school that grew that much, and provide them each $1,000 for all the full-time employees, and if you work half-time, $500, etc. And this year, the state didn't provide those funds, but we felt that it was a valuable incentive for our staff that work at these schools when they're able to have that kind of an accomplishment on behalf of their students, that we should set aside funds, about $100,000 it's going to take to supply all these staff members with funds to reward them for their great work, again, on behalf of our students. And so we have Twin Lakes Elementary here, Rama Elementary, Stagecoach Elementary, and Tehachapi Middle School. And so I just want to personally, on behalf of the school district, thank you for your work with our students and our schools. We're very proud of you and are excited to have you here this evening, and just excited to reward you with not only some money, which I'm sure you appreciate, but we got you a fancy plaque that might be worth more than the $1,000. I don't know, but you'll have to decide that. So I'm going to turn the time over to Mr. Harasik. He could talk a little bit more about this award and your growth individually as schools. And then Mr. Harasik is Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, and then they'll take it from there, and we'll wait up here for you when we call your names.
Okay, I'm just going to give you a little background on each school. So Stagecoach Elementary had the most growth in school points. They grew 28.61 points. And that means their school grade went from a D to a B, correct? Awesome, it's great stuff. Good. The second most growth in school points was Tehachapi Middle School, 22.35. And correct me if I'm wrong, Tony, they went from an F to a C. It's awesome. It's great stuff. The third is Rama Elementary at 20.7 points. And they went from a B to an A. That's great. And the fourth school, Twin Lakes Elementary, grew 18.26 points. And they went from an F to a D and missed a C by, like, how much? Half a point? Is that what it is? Half a point they missed a C, so that's awesome. If you give them a hand, that's a great job. Good. And we do appreciate what you do as a staff at each of your schools, because we know at the end of the day that there's a child with a face that is tied to this growth. There's a parent or a guardian that has really helped the district achieve this data. And there's also the teachers, obviously, and all staff at the sites, EAs, custodial members, etc., and then administrators at those sites. And now we'll turn over to Ashley, and we will give you your nice, beautiful plaque, and you will get your incentive pay or your bonus money, I believe, on this Friday's paycheck. Okay, that's awesome.
That's really high. Okay. I'm going to call out your name. If you would please stay up here so that we can get a picture with all of the staff and the board when you come up to pick up your plaque. By school. So we're going to start with Stagecoach Elementary. Thank you, Mr. Hyatt. First, we have Renee Autry. Aileen Avila. Brenda Barbone. Kay Belleville. Sorry, thank you. Felicia Ballone. Elizabeth Chavaria. Margie Cicciarillo. Linda Curley. Rachel Dennison. David Deschini. Ethel Ellison. Danny Goyna. Romalda Garcia. Victoria Garcia. Jeffrey Hartog. Travis Hemingway. Karen Henry. Ronald Hernandez. Lindsay Joe. Daniel Largo. Juliet Lopez. Keegan Mackenzie Chavez. Benina Maldonado. Kieran Manycows. Linda Martinez. Susan Medivilio. Sorry. Phoebe Mpaiza. Crystal Morris. Clara Morris. Constance Nance. Vierna Pierno. Christina Roman. Selena Romero. Noel Romero. Maria Rivera. Priscilla Sanchez. Candace Smith. Amy Stewart. John Stewart. Melissa Teller. Stephen Yazzie. Jolene Usalu. Sorry. Oh, sorry. Mr. Hartog. So this is the Gallup McKinley County Schools Excellence Award presented to Stagecoach Elementary School for the 28.16 point gain on the 2017-2018 NM State Report Card. Ready? Okay. Next, we're going to present the awards for Tohatchee Middle School. We have Edwin Brown. Joy Castaneda. Mary Clark. Rafael Esparza. Maria Gonzalez. Jorge Gutierrez. Betty Heinrich. Ruthie Henry. Elmer Invento. Leah Keone. Shelley Mae Mariano.
You only get the 1,000 if you show up.
That's what Mr. Bond said. Carrie McGill.
Keep my system going.
Anthony Morrison. Rufus Nabahi. Carmelita Nez. Stephanie Nez. Melissa Novak. Garland Rivera. Lolita Sandoval. Ronald Serrano. Virginia Edison Smith. Hannah Streeter. Namia Tan. Dwayne Thomas. Larita Toledo. And Frida Yazi. Mr. Morrison? This is the Gallup McKinley County Schools Excellence Award presented to Tohatchee Middle School for the 22.35 point gain on the 2017-2018 New Mexico State School Report Card. Thank you. And now we're presenting awards to Rama Elementary School. Millicent Allender. Lori Bowers. April Burson. Amanda Clausen. David Clausen. Galen Clausen. Glenda Clausen. Janice Cowboy. Jean Cox. Jaewon Heron. Melinda Heron. Patrice Kalistui. Stua. Kalistua. Deanne Larson. Jonathan Lee. Ned Lewis. Courtney Lewis Lastiano. Jeremy Morgan. Nathan. Oscar Ontiveros. Heather Prats. Margaret Scragg Sos. Flint Titchen. Michelle Titchen. Pamela Tastisi. Sayasi. Apologies. You should have done this, Mr. Hine.
I know I should have done that for
Edward Workman. Mr. Ontiveros, this is the Gallup McKinley County Schools Excellence Award presented to Rama Elementary School for the 20.7 point gain on the 2017-2018 New Mexico State School Report Card. Last one. And now we are presenting Twin Lakes Elementary their awards. Jennifer Engel. Laura Barney. Franklin Benali. Darlene Brown. Trevor Claw. Jason DeJoly. Valerie Denetclaw. Miriam Ferraris. Tanya Hubbard. Herbert Kay. Verica Livingston. Victoria Livingston. Diane Long. Woodrow Long. Amanda Penaloza. Ophelia Sanchez. Adriana Sandoval Joe. Judah Stanowski. Melissa Trillo. John Paul Van Derdis Fidel. Sam Whitehair. Rayanne Yazzie. And Vida Yazzie. Ms. Sanchez. This is the Gallup McKinley County Schools Excellence Award presented to Twin Lakes Elementary for the 18.26 point gain on the 2017-2018 New Mexico State School Report Card.
I want to congratulate everybody that received awards, and it's too bad everybody's leaving. The meeting's about to get good. Thank you. We appreciate your hard work. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, let's move on to item number 3 of our board agenda.
I would like to make a motion that we approve the minutes of August 13th, 2018.
Joan, roll call, please.
Mr. Mitchell? Ms. Manuelito?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen?
Yes. Item 4, approval of the consent agenda items, 4A, 4B, 4C, 4D, 4E, 4F, 4G, and 4H. Are there any questions from the board about any of these items?
Mr. Mortensen, I would like to go ahead and motion to approve. However, I do have a couple of questions, and I'm pretty sure I'll be answered. But on the donation of the $15,000, Mr. Hyatt, where will those, I think it indicated the school
It's in
that the donation will be made to? Will that be this school year, or is that something that has already been implemented? I'm trying to find it, I'm sorry.
Mrs. Manuelito, I believe it is for this school year only, not for multiple years.
Okay. And the schools indicated on that donation, are they all those schools? There's like the elementary, mid-school, and high schools.
There's a list of the schools.
Uh-huh.
It's kind of on my packet's backwards, but it shows all the schools that can benefit from this award. So they service a lot of different schools, a lot of different ways. That's what this money is going towards. It's not one specific school.
Okay.
What type of services do they provide, Mr. Hyatt?
That's a great question. They staff, from what I understand, is they staff nutrition educators to provide services to
It says
the
work
educational
with
programs.
gardening, hoop houses, and after-school programs.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if that, once you implement all those schools,
It's not for staff, is what I'm trying to. It's for students.
yeah, but it didn't seem like a lot of money, but I was just
It's-
wondering.
Every little bit helps.
Yes, I know. And the other question I had was on the fitness. Are those on the next donation from Gallup Medical Center?
Yes.
I forgot what school it was given to.
For Red Rock Elementary
Yes,
School?
thank you. Is that already given to them already? Are they set up, or are they?
Mrs. Manuelito, I don't know if they've actually received the items yet,
Uh-huh.
but I can double check on that and get back to you this evening.
Okay. Thank
Or
you.
I can have somebody work on it right now. Maybe Mr. Bond. Can you
And-
see if you can get a hold of Red Rock either by email or Mrs. Rodriguez, to see if we can find out if those items have already been delivered?
And my last question, sir, is for the UNM Gallup nursing program, I just kept seeing it's Gallup, I'm assuming it's district-wide for the kids to attend that nursing program, but how are we helping with the rural areas and transportation?
Mrs. Manuelito, I'll have Dr. Pauletta White come up and explain a little bit more about that agreement between us and UNM.
Thank you.
Members of the board, audience, I have for the UNM Student Nursing Affiliation Agreement, I have Jonathan in the audience. He can come in, answer any questions, specific questions you may have.
Thank you.
Hello, good evening, board members. My name is Jonathan Lumibao. I am one of the nursing faculty for the UNM Gallup Nursing Program, and I could try to answer some of your questions.
So these are our students, right, from Gallup McKinley County? They're still in high school?
These are actually some of them should have been. They're not completely the high school students. They used to study here for when they were high school, but all of these nursing students are students that got into the nursing program.
Okay.
Into our
Oh, okay. I thought we were kind of doing a career readiness kind of program, and that's how I was wondering if we were going to help with transportation. But so they've already graduated, but they are Gallup McKinley former
yes.
Gallup McKinley County students. Oh, okay. Okay.
Mrs. Manuelito, we see it kind of as a benefit as a pipeline
Okay.
for us because we continually need nurses also, and so this is just a way to help with that.
I know that Farmington High School, we had a Region 1 meeting there 4 months ago, and they have in their high school, they have a CNA program. Is that something that we can probably start looking into as a district to start offering? Because they did vital signs, they have a whole lab.
Right.
A whole, I don't know how many, huge room that they offer CNA program at the high school level.
That could be an option for you if that's what you feel like. But we also do have a CNA program up in UNM Gallup that we do have some students taking that before they come into our nursing program.
Did you hear my question, Mike?
I don't have any further questions. Is there anybody else?
No, I
that
didn't
has
hear
a
your
question?
question. No, we were talking about something else. I apologize.
I was saying Farmington High School had a classroom for the CNA program that they were offering to their high school. And I just thought it was awesome that they offered that kind of career readiness kind of class that the kids could get their CNA certification before they move up to the actual nursing degree program.
And Mrs. Manuelito, that's one of the career pathways that we're looking at implementing in the future with our career pathway initiative. And health science is one of those major areas, but we've also talked about specifically CNA certification because that is one way for students to get a certification and actually leave high school and instantly be able to work in that field because there's so many opportunities and job openings for CNAs.
Thank you, Mr. Hyatt. And Mr. Mortensen, as I said, I motion to approve consent item agendas.
Roll call, please, Joan.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yes.
Ms. Manuelito?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Mortensen?
Yes. We're going to move now into section 5, the study circle part of our meeting. 5A is public comment. Looks like the only one that we have right now is Mrs. Georgiana Desiderio, who's a parent. Thank you and welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you, members of the board, superintendent, Joan, and audience. Thank you. I would like to do a public comment about the school supplies. It was mentioned before that the teachers were going to get their supplies, and every student was going to get a packet, and that packet was for them individually to take home. On the first day of school, students in the elementary did not receive their packet. They were told to keep in the classroom. And middle school took theirs home. So within McKinley County, our students, they need, some of them are less fortunate. Some of them, this helps the parents a great deal. And with that, I would like to say thank you for providing the supplies. Furthermore, I believe that a better communication would be in place, and I'm bringing this to members of the board. I wish Ms. Manuelito would have stayed. That I believe that one thing is when one thing is said, that it should be followed through with it. Because it brings confusion, not only to the school, but it brings confusion to us as parents as well. So therefore, I brought this before the board, and that was me as a parent. That was my understanding. And from August to now, I've had several people, I would rather them be anonymous, parents and teachers together, that teachers are still in need of supplies. We've had comments to where some principals, they just stash them, and our students cannot use them.
No.
For what reason, I do not know. So if we are going to enrich our children's education, then I believe that as adults, as a board, superintendent, that we need to better communicate. I can make a suggestion to a problem that before registration starts for our county, that this packet be ready, that we stop procrastinating and get things done before the school year starts. So that way when we as parents come in to register our children, everything's there. And as a parent, we can take these things home. It's unfortunate that the blessing that we do have, that the supplies that were supplied, a lot of them ended up in the trash. A lot of them were trying to be sold on the Gallup swap. Unfortunately, some don't understand that when you get these kind of supplies, that it is a blessing, that it is something that can help you. But my main concern is, instead of a lot of things that go on, that communication is a big thing. Not only communication with the board, but communication with superintendent and the administration, but also communication with us as parents. So that is my concern, and I want to bring that and voice that here. Members of the board, superintendent, audience, I thank you for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate your comment. We don't have anybody else signed up, but is there anybody that hadn't signed up for public comment? Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next section, 5B, reports, the superintendent report, and I'll turn the time over to Mr. Hyatt.
Members of the board, I'm going to go through several items really quickly. If you have any specific questions, please let me know, and I'll spend more time on these items. We didn't get a chance last time because of pressing business at the last board meeting, but I wanted to make sure I show some appreciation for our staff for a great start to the school year. We can usually gauge how great it is by how many complaints we get on the first day, and we had very few, and so that's a very positive thing. That means school sites were prepared for students, and things went rather smoothly. Sometimes that can be a stressful time of the year for staff and administration, but it went really smoothly, and parents also. But we appreciate our staff and the great work that they do. My second item actually has to do with public comment, so I appreciate Mrs. Desiderio bringing this up. Is each year, last year was our first year of implementing school supplies, and we did much better this year. We still have some things to work out. I actually totally agree with the communication piece. We need to have a better communication system to make sure that parents understand what's happening with those supplies, because it was somewhat different from school to school and levels between secondary and elementary. And so I even misspoke about some of that. And so I was part of the communication issue at a meeting. And so I have been working with, we've already done an assessment of how it rolled out. We've heard some concerns from various people, and we're taking that criticism, I think constructive criticism I would call it, and so that we can do better next year. We're looking at one area. Typically at the secondary level, students have backpacks and things like that, and they're bringing supplies from class to class. Elementary level, typically those supplies stay in the desk, but we understand that there's some of those supplies need to go home also. We're actually looking at next year having 2 packages. One's for desk, and then one's actually a supply kit that students can take back and forth from home, because work is done at home. And that way, teachers don't have to worry about sending things all the time back and forth and having that chance of losing supplies. So again, there's several areas in which we brainstormed and heard concerns about, and we are looking to address those, not necessarily just by next year, but actually mid-year, and some other areas in which we're trying to improve even during this school year. The other thing, go ahead. You want-
Mr. Hyatt, I
Sure.
just want to say I did hear just a couple concerns. One was a community member here from Inner City Gallup. Of course, their concern was we shouldn't be spending this money on school supplies, that we should be used on technology and smart boards and stuff like that. But, I kind of, just heard her out, but I think one thing, on the other side of that, I think I heard more positive comments, on what we did do, for our students and help. Just back to back, I think every chapter meeting I went to, we had a lot, and even going to the schools, parent nights, open houses, that was one of the huge comments was thank you, a lot of thank yous, a lot of appreciation that helped the parents save money. So, I think with what I've heard in my area, there's been a lot of positive remarks about the school supplies, and I just want to say from them to us here, administration and the board, thank you very much for continuing to support our kids in that area, in this area of school supplies. So I think Walmart's not too happy, but I think it was.
If Walmart would allow us to use POs, we would purchase from them, but currently they don't allow that. So. The next item, just to keep you informed, as you know a little bit about what it transpired with respect to the sufficiency lawsuit that we were a plaintiff in and that we won one of 6 school districts. It's unfortunate our local newspaper failed. They reported all of the plaintiffs except for us, and I believe the Yazzie Martinez case, the Yazzie part of that is actually a student from our school district. But I am in contact with our attorneys and meeting with them at least every other week so that we can try to do our best to make sure that the solution, I guess, or the fix, we might want to call it, for what the judge is expecting, that is done in a way that pleases all the plaintiff districts and also is supportive for students across New Mexico. I'll actually be in a meeting this Friday with our attorneys again. Through elementary, tonight you approved for that school to begin, and we will start that about first or second week in October. And so if you would just be ready to start thinking about dates for an open house, or not an open house, but groundbreaking, maybe an open house in conjunction with that, so that people can see the plans and things like that. So we'll be scheduling that soon for Through, and it's exciting for that community.
Yes.
The next item, I'd been asked for a report on McKinley Academy, our new early college program. I had mentioned this a little bit, probably in conversations outside of a board meeting, but when we first started McKinley Academy, we expected about 25 students. Then as the time went on, we recognized more and more interest. This year we started an early college program, and in its first year we have 240 students that we are transporting across the district to give them that opportunity, and any student an opportunity, no matter their situation. So we're excited for the success so far of that program, and this is just, again, a precursor to what we'll be doing with career pathways across the district and looking at more ways in which we can help students gain certification, licensure, or other skills so that they're better prepared for the workforce when they graduate. A 3-year planning, not necessarily 3-year planning, but a year planning, 2 more years to get full implementation. We're working to find a consultant currently, and we think that we'll have that done within the next week or so. Next item.
Mr.
Yes.
Hyatt, on the McKinley Academy, how's the transportation and the lunch and breakfast going for the students? Have you got any reports or feedback back on that?
Mrs. Manuelito, typically I hear when things don't go well, and I haven't heard anything, so I'm going to assume that means things are going really, really well. I haven't had any concerns, and I haven't heard any. It seems like everything's running quite smoothly. Usually you expect to have some hiccups along the way when you implement a new program, and in this particular case, it went more smoothly than expected, just because of the massive undertaking that this was.
Superintendent, I just was wondering, with this number of 240 students, where are these students being counted as far as when it comes to the grading system with the state? Or where does their points go?
They go back to their home school, Mr. Mitchell. So we'll use Tallahatchie High School student that comes into the academy. their state scores go back to Tehachapi High School. This is not a separate school, it's just an academy within the school system.
Okay, thank you.
A couple more items, just to let you know, when the bus accident, the tragic accident that happened on I-40, we did provide some buses. They needed some help in getting those people that were involved in the crash that didn't need to go to the hospital a way to get back to Gallup. And so we were fortunate to be able to provide some support for that horrific thing that happened near our communities. So I want to let you know that we did use 2 school buses to transport people involved in that accident. The other thing I was going to mention is that I will be providing you documents regarding Middle College. As you know, there were some due dates that recently came up that they needed to provide documents to us for their corrective action plan. I received those documents a few days ago, but there's still some questions that we're hammering out between Middle College and myself to make sure that everything is in line so that they are abiding by that corrective action plan. I just received an email before the board meeting. I'll review that and make sure I get you all that information, hopefully by tomorrow. And so be expecting that in your email. And that's all I have this evening. Board, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Hyatt. I guess the next section here is the counseling report.
Yes, thank you. If I could have Mary Lindenmeyer come up, and she has some information for us, and then if you have any questions, I'll proceed to that point.
Honorable members of the Gallup McKinley County School Board of Education, Superintendent Mr. Mike Hyatt, Associate Superintendents, and audience. I've been asked to present on the status of the counseling program within McKinley County Schools. I will address this focusing on our need to continue training our counselors so that they can deal with the mental health issues as well as the academic issues within our schools. We have had a plethora of trainings in the last few months. I'd like to identify some of those trainings that were made available to our counselors during the summer of 2018. I hope you understand that our counselors are not on contract during the summer, so this is their personal choice to attend. But we have been able to provide trainings, and on the average, we've had 6 to 10 counselors at each of these sessions. We had QPR training, which was made available in May and June. We had Native American motivational interviewing, weaving Native American and Western practices training at RMCH July 30th and 31st. I was lucky enough to attend that, and it was one of the most fabulous trainings I've ever been to. We've had applied suicide intervention skills training, ASSIST, offered August 9th and 10th at RMCH. We've had teaching by kinship with compassion and love, offered August 22nd and 23rd at RMCH. Mental health first aid for youth was offered on August 23rd in Crown Point at Dene College, and we are going to continue providing that throughout the district at school sites for both staff and community members. We had professional ethics offered on June 22nd. 12 core functions of substance abuse counseling was offered on June 21st. Trauma-informed approaches was offered on May 28th. All of these were attended by 6 to 10 of our counselors throughout the district during summertime on their own time. I think that was something to applaud them for. However, we don't stop in the summer, we go on. During the 2018-2019 session coming up, we are going to be able to provide our counselors, as well as staff in some instances, and community members, trainings in the following areas. Mental health first aid for youth in the fall of 2018, and we will provide this for for community members as well. In fact, September 29th in the through area, we are providing that training for faculty and staff, and we will be offering that open to the community if we have extra slots. QPR training in the late fall and early spring will be offered to all faculty, counselors, as well as community members. Something we're really excited about, and we need your help getting the word out so that we get parents there. The New Mexico Attorney General's office staff will be presenting throughout the district on cyberbullying, cyber texting, cyber sexting, and human trafficking. All of those are interrelated issues. And whether we realize it or not, there is a great deal of human trafficking going on in this community. At these presentations, we will have informational booths from our many providers in an attempt to further inform the community. Presentations will take place in the schools during the day and in the evenings for community members. And I have the flyers to hand you when I'm finished with my presentation. We will have trauma for adolescents. This will be a training for our counselors. We will again have the ASSIST training, the Applied Suicide Intervention Skills training. We will have that on 3 different occasions, October 18th and 19th, January 17th and 18th, and March 28th and 29th. It is an intensive training, and it is limited to 15 participants. Again, that's the Applied Suicide Skills Intervention training. It is an expansion and a much more substantial and in-depth training than the QPR, the Question, Persuade, and Refer. We will be having bullying prevention for students, staff, and parents from awareness to action by John Lilly on October 22nd and 23rd. Mindfulness training will take place in January for counselors and for staff who wish to participate. October 17th, we have cognitive behavior therapy taking place at GIMC. That's part of our relationship with their ZIA grant. And since we are partnering with them in the Zero Suicide Intervention, the ZSI grant, we've been invited to bring our counselors to that. We are also working with the Eastern Agency and GIMC to provide the OVEUS training to our schools within the Eastern Agency and within the parameters of GIMC. But this is in the early stages, as it is a most comprehensive anti-bullying program that is aligned and works well with PBIS. As we look to the future, plans are in place to provide these trainings and also test preparation for those school counselors who wish to participate, the opportunity to work towards their mental health licenses through the New Mexico Counseling and Therapy Practice Board. We're having our first meeting on September 15th to begin test prep for their, it's the first level of professional counseling independently on September 15th, so they can prepare to take the test, the LMHC test, and to complete their application forms. And we have about 15 of our counselors who are eager. They understand that this is on their dime. This is not something that the school district is providing support for, because it is the professional responsibility of all counselors to further their professional development. So if you have any questions, I can provide you with the copy of my notes. We've been busy. We have been working more and more with the Eastern Agency, New Horizons, Crown Point, IHS, and the Eastern Agency, MSPI, to improve and build the support within that program. Thank you. Any questions?
Yes, Mr. Mortensen, I have a few. A couple of things that I want to say. I would like to thank you for your report, first of all. Second is I would like your copy of this, of all the dates and training. And I think I also like to ask which schools attended which. I hope it's not the same 6 or 10 attending the same meetings all the time, or the different meetings all the time. Hopefully it's a variety of counselors attending these sessions. So I would really like to know which schools receive these trainings and which other schools in the future are planning to attend the ASSIST and the future trainings. Maybe the ones that missed out on the first round could take the second round of the trainings. I work very intensively to continue this initiative in my community on suicide prevention and bullying, stigma, and mental health. So one of the concerns that I have is on our medical release, documentation that we give to us as parents that we receive, are we signing that medical release to include mental health services? If not, how can we implement that? Is it, when we do medical release, is that covering the whole child? Because I wanted that clarification. We did have another work session or meeting together, and that was a question that was brought up.
My understanding is that that is a whole child release. In fact, we just, with your approval of the MOU with the IHS Crown Point Agency, we are able to provide mental health therapy from a counselor at New Horizons at Thoreau Middle School and High School every Wednesday, and they will be going out now to Crown Point High and Crown Point Middle as soon as we are able to get a date from them to attend and provide that counseling.
They'll be coming out on Wednesdays,
To Thoreau Community.
to through high school.
And through mid-school.
And I just wanted to really say thank you for also recognizing the service units in our area. We do have the Crown Point Service Unit and Gallup Service Unit, and I believe that initiative is being worked on, and thank you for that, because I think that would help provide us with more clear information for our programs. The other question that I had is, if we're getting our counselors certified in the LPCC or the LMH licensures or certifications, will that interfere with the regular academic counseling?
That's an excellent question. I believe in the vision of the New Mexico State Personnel Board. We now have an opportunity to hire what we call student success advisors, who can do quite a bit of the paperwork with next step plans, looking at schedules, making sure that the audits are done, looking with SAT and 504s, in hopes of releasing our counselors to do more mental health counseling. That's not going to happen tomorrow, Ms. Manuelito. We're on a long journey, so we're moving slowly in that direction. But I think that ultimately our school counselors will be able to provide the mental health counseling that's needed.
What was that position called again?
It's called the Student Success Advisor position. It's a new initiative from the New Mexico Public Education Department.
And I thank you for that. I didn't know there was that position. But I am a go-getter, so I like to get it done, and that's why I asked you to put this report on the agenda again, to get a feedback of what's going on and the training that's being implemented. If we wait and take our time, I don't want to lose any kids. So I think one of the things that I really am going to push is for this effort to get implemented. And my last question to you is follow-ups. I know that that's a big problem that we have with all service unit, is providing follow-up for our children. I'm thankful that we are meeting, and I'm thankful to the Thoreau High, MSPI, and Department of Behavioral Health, and the community of Thoreau for joining efforts. And I hope that, in Gallup McKinley County, sorry, I hope that we see these programs as, I don't know, of a pilot program, a model for Gallup Service Unit, Tohatchee Service Unit, and even extending out to other school districts that is using community resources to help the school districts. And that's all we're doing. We're not doing anything else but trying to help our children and to save as many children as we can out there from this evilness of suicide and bullying. So I want to reinforce that's our initiative and that's our plan, and I'm very thankful that our board is actively involved in this and supporting these initiatives.
And I can let you know, Ms. Manuelito and members of the board, that we are collaborating with mental health providers throughout the district, Crown Point, Navajo, Tohatchi, the city, through MSPI, the City of Gallup, DVPI, SNAPSA, Gallup Indian Medical Center, Indian Health Services in Crown Point, the Sexual Assault Division, which is beginning to talk to me about doing some presentations, and New Horizons in the Eastern Agency. I have worked long and hard to build these relationships, and I'm proud of those relationships, and I think it's something that, because of our high rate of suicide in the community and in the nation, because of the high instance of bullying that goes on in this country, we need to protect our students from these things. And I am passionate about it as I am passionate about teaching history. So I will bust every ounce of muscle I have to make sure that these things happen.
So follow-ups?
Follow-ups, Ms. Manuelito, I'm not sure what you mean by follow-ups. I can guarantee that when our students present with suicide ideation, our counselors follow up with them and make sure that they have appointments. Follow-ups, if you want me to continue to follow up with the board, let Mr. Hyatt, our superintendent, know that you want me to follow up. I don't know of any other way to follow up.
Okay, the follow-up, not with Mr. Hyatt, but follow-up as in if a child has suicidal ideations or has attempted or has a plan, are they referred into New Horizon or Gallup McKinley County, Gallup IHS, how are we following up on that student to make sure they're doing okay? I know Crown Point area has a crisis response team that does the follow-up, but I'm worried about the other schools, other children in the district.
Our counselors follow up with them. They follow up with them in meetings. We place them in the student assistance team process where we provide them with interventions. Our counselors monitor them. I can tell you at each of our schools we have groups in which students who are presenting with these at-risk behaviors meet with their counselors on a regular basis. I think it's weekly. We have we have grief groups at our schools. So our counselors are doing everything they can to follow up. They cannot provide the long-term mental health counseling, but they can provide opportunities for them to feel safe, to talk to somebody, our counselors in particular, and in group.
Can you provide me a list of where those grief supports are?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. That's all, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Manuelito. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks. Our next presenter.
Before you
go ahead.
Mr. Mortensen, I also provided you all, board members and administration, there's a little lifesaver that I provided you. One of this month of September is Suicide Prevention Month. So you can enjoy the little lifesaver that I provided you. It also has some of the warning signs and the resources that we give out. It's a Crown Point and Gallup area. If you need anything from shelters to rape crisis to legal services, they're all provided on the sheet for you. And one of the things that we're going to be pushing at our schools and our community is how we can continue to restore hope. We really don't want to use the word suicide, but maybe if we can be a lifesaver or restoring hope. So we'll be sharing a lot of our activities with Mr. Hyatt, and hopefully he can, and administration, so they can come out and attend some of our events. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Manuelito. Our next presenter is the pride of Grants, New Mexico, Gerald Horacek.
Mr. Mortensen, members of the board, our last report today is regarding school grades, which charged Mr. Horacek to provide you some data, some highlights from those school grades, and again, highlight maybe areas of needs of improvement. I'm not sure what he has on this read through it all, but also those areas of success, which there was many. And as we saw this evening, having 4 schools have such dramatic change in their school grade scoring. So turn the time over to Mr. Rasek, and he can give you some updates on what we've discovered through our school grade reports.
I appreciate the plug. May come in handy down the road. Okay, so I'm going to go over some of this data is from my last presentation. I just want to go over it again, and then we'll introduce some new data. So just a reminder that during the last school year, it's an incredible accomplishment. We had 600 more students proficient in ELA and math. So in ELA or math, we had 600 new kids proficient. That means they are college and career ready, whether they're in 3rd grade or 11th grade, and now it's our job to make sure we keep them proficient. But once again, that's not how many proficient, it's new proficient students. If you go back to the 2016 to 18, we have a total of 804 more students proficient. And so what that tells you is from 16 to 17, we had 204, and then 17 to 18, we had 600. So we almost tripled that in 1 year. And it's really because, from our perspective, from the technical side, we aligned our assessments to our pacing guides to our instruction. Out of the 10 largest school districts in the state of New Mexico, we are one of the 10 largest. GMCS is #1 in ELA proficiency growth. So of the 10 largest districts, we are #1 for the last 3 years. GMCS students more than doubled the state average in proficiency growth, and of the 10 largest districts, we are #3 in mathematics proficiency growth. Pretty amazing accomplishments for our district. And so I'm just going to list some schools that we did outperform. Of those 10 largest, we outperformed Albuquerque Public Schools, Farmington Municipal Schools, Gadsden Municipal Independent Schools, and you've heard the Secretary of Education talk about Farmington and Gadsden. I just want to make sure that I could point out that we outperformed those schools and want to know why we weren't mentioned in that. Rio Rancho Public Schools, Santa Fe Public Schools, and Las Cruces Public Schools. So now we're just going to, we saw this slide I think a couple months ago. I'm just going to go over it again, but it's pretty powerful data. So let's just look at the 2-year growth. Statewide in ELA was 2.5. We more than doubled the state growth in ELA. We were 5.6. The state was 2.5. So that's more than doubling in that time frame. And then in math, statewide, the 2-year growth from 17 to 18 is 1.9, and once again, we beat that at 2.1. And then look at the 3-year growth. The state average was 3.5. We were 7.9, more than doubled again. Math, the state was 1.7, and we were 2.6. So we know we are doing some things well for our students. We also know we have a long way to go. We know that, and we're always striving to get better for our students. So this is Park ELA change in percent proficient among the 10 largest districts. So I just want to point out, of the 10 largest districts, this is the same data in a graph. You can see the blue is us. We far outperformed the other 9 districts. And then on page 6, this is 3-year growth for ELA. Once again, we outperformed all of the other, the 9 other districts that are the 9 largest. Mathematics, just once again, I'm going to show you that little table that I showed you in a graph. You can see that we're #3 in overall growth in mathematics over the last 2 years, and we are #3 in mathematics over the last 3 years. So the number of schools that grew in school grade points in our district. Last year, so in 2017, a couple years ago, we had 9 schools that grew in school grade points. This last year, we had 17. So when we had the schools here tonight, the 4 that we awarded the plaques to and the money, we only had 1 of those last year. It grew 15 or more. This year we have 4. But schools that grew in points, we only had 9 a couple years ago, and we almost doubled that to 17. So once again, we're just doing some things well. And I do want to stress, we know that the data we're showing, that it's showing a lot of success. It's because of the parents and the guardians in our community. It is because of the teachers and the students and the staffs and the principals at those sites, the administrative staff. And I want to say one thing about the board. Your support of us that we have had for the last year and a half is so important. You do not know how much that means to us as a group of 5, because we know we have your backing on what needs to be done, and it just helps us. So this data is really a true tribute also to you all for just supporting us in what we do, knowing that we make mistakes and we have to get better all the time. And so those 17 schools are listed. And the key thing I want you to take a look at when you look at the schools, they're from all over the district. And I think that's important in our daily work in my department, is you have Rama, you have Twin Lakes, you have through High and through Mid and Tohatchee, you have Gallup High and Mayamira, you have Chief Manuelito and Rocky View. They represent the whole district. They don't just represent in town or out of town. So we know when we have this type of large growth throughout the district, we are doing some things well, because we are just a huge district that's really spread out. Average school grade points growth. So 2 years ago, we had 9 schools that grew a total of 76.85 points, and if you divide that by 9, those 9 schools that grew in points grew by 8.54 points. This year, we had 17 schools that grew. Their total growth was 204.82 points. That's an average of 12.05 points per school. And what I want to share with you is, even on the growth, we're growing in school grade points. We're not going in the wrong direction for this year, so we're going to celebrate that and enjoy that. Well, we can. Number of schools that went up a letter grade. In 2017, there were only 4 schools that grew a letter grade. This year, that just finished, we had 10 schools, so we more than doubled the number of schools that went up a letter grade or more, and they're listed right here for you. Catherine Miller went from an F to a D. You look at Stagecoach, went from a D to a B. I mentioned Twin Lakes earlier. They went from an F to a D. They missed a C by like a half a point, maybe 7/10 of a point. Tohatchee Middle went from an F to a C. Mayamira went from a C to a B. And I think, I can't tell you I'm 100% accurate, but I do believe Mayamira had one of the largest growths in English language arts proficiency of almost any high school in the state of New Mexico. And for a school of 1,200 kids, 1,100 kids, that's hard to do. And so that's just amazing what they did in ELA. Number of schools that grew 10 points or more on the school grade. We had 1 2 years ago. I believe it was Rama. This year we had 9 total schools that grew 10 points or more, and then we recognized the 4 tonight that grew 15 points or more. And Catherine Miller was like at 14.78, so they were right there. They were so close. And then here's the actual 9 schools, and you know the first 4 because they were recognized tonight. Catherine Miller grew 14.73. You see through Middle, Rocky, Roosevelt, and Mayamira. Rocky View, Roosevelt, and Mayamira. And that is the end of the presentation. Any questions that you may have? I just want to be clear, we know we have a lot of work left to do. Mr. Hyatt really pushes us, and that's important that he does that. So that, because we know at the end of the day, and I really mean this, and I said it earlier, but there's every data point has a face of a child. And the more we can do for that child, district-wide and school-wise, we know we're impacting lives and changing lives. Any questions?
I do. Thank you. I really appreciate this report, and I like the graphs and everything. One of the things that I'm concerned about, what are we doing to help the schools that are not in this PowerPoint? What are we doing with our F schools and our D schools, and what are we doing to support them? Technical support, principal support, what are we doing to help them to get them to be on this PowerPoint next year?
I'd love to talk about this question. Mr. Morrison, Ms. Manuelito, several things. I think one thing is we have learned a lot over the last several years about what works, and there are some leaders in our schools that are at different levels, and so some are, it's new, this work is new to them, and some of them have been involved in it for several years, and it takes time. So one of the things that we're doing is making sure that we have clear expectations for our school site leaders. Last year was the first year that we had those expectations, and then also the supports behind it, because every school has different needs than others, and so we want to tailor our support through our curriculum instruction team to help foster that growth. On average, I would say of the schools that did very well or that grew, there is a level of fidelity in the way that they have implemented certain best practices in their school, which I believe contributes to their growth. There were not a whole lot of surprises. There were a few, in the positive and the negative, but overall, on average, there was some level of predictability that we had before even the grades came out, knowing that what we know about school sites. We have had some changes in leadership at several different schools for various reasons. And we also believe that that will help with some respect to that school seeing a new fresh face for leadership. And I do value, I mean, there's a lot of ownership across the district on how well we do, but I place a lot of the ownership on administration as far as leadership in school sites and also central office and making sure that we are continuously improving. So that's my quick 2 cents.
Yeah, and I do want to share another thing we do. So we put a lot of resources into providing professional development opportunities for teachers. We have groups that come out and go into classrooms and observe classrooms and help improve instruction. We have a walkthrough tool that principals use. We do a lot of coaching and feedback with our principals that deals with teachers. And I share that because when you see this data and how powerful it is, it tells us that those things we're doing are working. And Mr. Hyatt is exactly right. They're done with more fidelity at the schools that are performing better, and so we need to make sure that we dedicate more time to making sure that happens at the schools that are struggling.
If I could also add, you also have to take in consideration that school grades and the scoring of those, the way the state scores, changes.
Every year.
And so you cannot perfectly compare this year to 3 years ago because the way that the state scores it, they keep changing the bar or the goalpost. And so it makes it every year to some extent, well, most years, they're moving that goalpost. Usually not a lot, but enough that can affect grades too. So a school that may have gone down 2 years ago with the same scores would have gone up. And so it's not perfectly apples to apples when you're comparing year to year. It's not drastic changes the state's doing, but I want to make sure that the board understands and the community understands that 7 years ago or 6 years ago is not the same grading. The points that are attributed to different parts of the grading, it's different. Proficiency is worth more now, which takes away from some other areas. And so next year they're going to change it again significantly.
Significant changes.
And so we're going. It's almost like getting a new baseline of data. And so it's comparing this year to next year. It's almost like you're starting over. So that's unfortunate. We've been an advocate to keep it the same. The state wants to keep changing the bar. And in some areas I can see why they're doing it. I don't necessarily agree. But if you're going to have the community understand school grades and look at it over a period of time, you got to have the same criteria for those scores. If not, you're giving mixed information to the community and to schools and to staff and students. And so I'm not sure what's involved in that, whether it's politics or trying to set higher expectations, but we do value growth. And when we look at school grades and we talk to principals, we're not so much worried about necessarily what the proficiency is all the time, but whether your students are growing or not. That's what matters the most. So whether a student's a low performing, they grew a lot, is much better than a high performing student growing a little, even though the higher performing student will get more points on the school grade that the lower performing student will not get in the way the state grades us. So that's probably a longer discussion to get into the details and the weeds of that, but I just want to make sure that's understood by the board.
So are we also doing the same thing? I remember one of the work sessions or a board meeting that we also discussed, like these 4 schools that presented or were received their award today. Are you guys kind of piggybacking off of their tactics or their implementations of what they're doing right with other schools and having them discuss it at a principals meeting or teachers meeting or with the lower performing schools? I mean, is there that relationship that they can build upon to see what's working and what they can do to implement into their schools to raise that FDs up?
We do meet, so my department, my DIs meet with the principals once a month outside of when the district meets with them. And they set up their trainings in those meetings to make sure that the higher performing schools can share best practices so that struggling principals can take those ideas, and if they fit their school, they can go and implement them. So absolutely, we look at the better performing schools and principals to provide ideas or trainings for the schools that struggle. Definitely, we do that. And we have a system set up for that.
And some schools aren't quite ready to implement some of those things.
Right.
So that's why those collaborative teams are good. The zone, we call the zones of schools. Just like the same thing goes for, it's good practice not only in the classroom, but with teachers and also at the principal level where they're collaborating, working together. So we used to have a principal here where they could vouch for whether they get together or not, but we do make sure that they're sharing best practices with each other, what's working.
And do we still have the PPE, or where's that at in, I know some get kind of winged out year by year, and then we add some more, and I know we were adding a couple more. How is that, where are we at on that, those schools? And was it TPE? TPE?
So
and PPE?
there are definitely schools in PPE. I believe we had 4 that are in their second year, and I think 6 new ones that are starting their first year of PPE. And then we now have 4 schools in TPE, which is a Teachers Pursuing Excellence. And if you want the names of those schools, I can get those to you pretty quick that are in those programs.
Please.
Yes.
That's all I have, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Manuelito. Any other questions? Thank you, Gerald. We appreciate your time. Our next section.
Just
here.
one more comment,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
High. I think we need to maybe save some funding that we gave out tonight for next year, because I think we're going to make some awesome more schools reaching those goals.
We want to continue to incentivize and reward
Yeah.
student
We
success
better
and teacher
add
success.
some more money
so,
to
yeah.
that, because I think we're going to do awesome.
All right,
I'd be
well,
happy to give over my salary for being a board member for the awards.
Me too.
Our next section is under study circle is board reports. Is there anybody that wishes to report any activities that they've had over the last month, any relevant activities that pertain to their roles as a board member?
No, sir, but I will go ahead and email you some of the activities that are being planned for this month, and if you guys can attend, please try to make it out. Thank you.
I just want to thank our superintendent and his staff, including our principals of Tohatchi Mid and Tohatchi High School for coming out to the Tohatchi chapter and giving a full updated report, as well as Carmen Moffett on Indian education. So thank you guys.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Schaaf.
Just one thing to report, Superintendent Mike Hyatt and myself, we took a tour of a new Lincoln School, and it's going along quite nicely, and it's going to be a beautiful school.
It's great.
Great. I don't have anything to report as well. The notices and communications, I'll leave that to folks to look at on their own, where it has important dates in the future. We'll move on. There is no old business, as we have postponed that to a future date. We'll coordinate to take up action of the old items for the lobbyist services. Our new business is 7A. And I'll turn the time over to Mr. Hyatt for that one.
Mr. Mortensen, members of the board, we have a couple people here. I'd like to step up to the microphone. Dr. Pauletta White, as you know, and also Belinda Sabatse, who I had the opportunity to work with for several years down in Zuni. I'd like them to come at the microphone just in case you have any questions about our MOA with the Zuni tribe to implement Zuni language and cultural education in our school district. And this has been a lot of work, and we all thought we had it right, and we had to make some changes, and so we're hoping that this is the final one that we'll go through so that we can have that agreement with the Zuni tribe. And we'll be going down next week on Thursday at...
This Thursday.
Oh, this Thursday.
At 1.
At 1. That's where I'm supposed to be in Zuni, and we're going to do a signing of that agreement if it's approved tonight. So you're welcome to come with me if anybody's in town and wants to head down to Zuni. Dr. White.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hyatt, members of the board, and members of the audience. In July, you approved the initial memorandum of agreement with Zuni Pueblo, Zuni Tribal Council to get their Zuni language program up and running in Rama Elementary and Rama High. And since then, the Zuni Council has made changes, so I'm going to ask Ms. Belinda to go ahead and go over some of the changes that was added.
Good evening. It's an honor to be here. Members of the board, Superintendent Hyatt, and the audience. First of all, I'd like to start with congratulating the Gallup McKinley County School District for all your performances within the last school year. It was a pleasure to see all the awards given out, and I want to congratulate you for a job well done and continue with your success. This evening, I want to tell you about the revisions that were made on the Memorandum of Agreement from the last MOA that you approved. Items M, N, and O were added within the past few days. And item M, the Zuni tribe shall provide the school with I, direction on the appropriate use of technology to teach Zuni language, which would involve like the /L on the computers and the digital materials and posters that will be made available to you through the UNM website that we have, and perimeters on what students are allowed to participate in the program, such as cultural knowledge, clans, directions, why we have fasting in the wintertime, and social structure. What won't be available to them appropriate, it will be the anything to do with the religious societies like the medicine societies, the Kiva, those will not be taught in the classrooms. And next one is criteria for bilingual biliteracy seal, equivalent for graduates, and a list of those graduates who have earned the seal, due prior to May 1st each year if desired by the tribe, and the name of an individual who can work as a substitute teacher in the case of if the need arises. And for item N, the parties agree that the school shall offer the language program for pass-fail credit only until such time as the Zuni tribe requests the school to offer the program for a letter grade, at which point the tribe will provide the school with a grading rubric for letter grades. And the language teachers shall be bound by the Gallup McKinley County Employee Manual and the district's pay scale. And then item O, the parties agree to communicate as needed to ensure a high-quality delivery of the Zuni language program, and in coordination with the language teacher, review the program annually and revise the agreement if necessary. Those are the changes that were made, and the revised MOA has been provided to the Gallup McKinley County School District.
Thank you. I appreciate your time. Do we have any questions from the board?
One question I have, thank you for, first of all, thank you for allowing this program to take place, and, revitalizing our languages and our culture is so vital to us as Indigenous people. And I'm so glad that we're taking another step towards that goal of ours. And in our language, we say ahiha, and that means thank you. So I really appreciate you coming, and the Zuni tribe and council for bringing this to us. The only question I have on this is this only for Zuni students, or could other nationalities take part in this?
This will be for Zuni students only.
Okay. That's all I have, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Manuelito. Do I have a motion for this
So
new
moved.
business?
So moved.
Okay. Joan, roll call, please.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. You're in
Thank
business.
you.
Thank you, and we will proceed with the approval of the memorandum of agreement.
Great.
Have a good evening. Thank you.
You too.
Thank you. Drive safe.
Mr. Hyatt, what time are you leaving on Thursday?
I will leave here at 8 o'clock.
PM?
If I want to be really, really late, I will. But, that'd be-
Okay.
The next item of business, 7B, approving of arming security guards.
Mr. Mortensen, members of the board, there has been discussions about safety in schools amongst the board, amongst the community, and so there has been talk about whether we should or shouldn't have some sort of armed personnel inside of our schools and what that might look like. And so we have done our research to find out what the options are to provide to you so that you can help us with next steps. There are several issues regarding this topic that you needed to have accurate, good information before a decision is made on whether we want to, and if we do decide to have armed personnel in schools, what that might look like, and who would be carrying. So one of our concerns, as you know, is we're a very rural district, and as a rural district, there are some parts of our county that the opportunity to have a police officer close by to intervene if there ever was a threat against a school, it takes many, many minutes, if not half hours or hours, before law enforcement can reach a school. And so that's been a big concern of ours. And so what we did is we have talked to our legal counsel. We have also talked to our current security company that works with the school district. And we have also talked with our insurance company at looking at what options there are. Obviously, you want to be insured through an insurance company if you decide to move this direction. And so the insurance company said there's three basic options that they can support in schools, and one of them is arming staff, teachers. The other one is arming security guards, and the third one is having SROs, which are school resource officers, which are basically police officers that work in schools. We used to have a school resource officer in town here, but what's happened is, at least in town, and I believe the same happens for the Navajo Nation, is that they are having difficulty finding enough police officers. And so one of our options is to continually work with the police departments and potentially use some of our funding to support hiring police officer, maybe sharing the cost of those SROs for schools. But if they can't find police officers, that's not very helpful. We currently have security guards in our secondary schools. The security company that we work with does have about 10% of their security that have the correct licensure according to our insurance company that would qualify them to be able to carry on a campus to protect students. They also have certification for others to be able to carry. I'm not going to promote that we arm staff in our schools at this particular time. But I am providing the information in regards to whether we want to arm security guards, and if SROs in the future, that's probably the best option, because those are police officers that work in our communities. The issue is, I want to make sure that you're aware of also, we've talked about this before, is the Navajo Nation has laws against the public carrying guns on tribal land. We have checked with our legal counsel and also have done some investigating with the Navajo Nation, and that is factual, is that we could not arm security guards on tribal lands. The only way that you can arm somebody in a school on tribal lands is if they are an officer, whether it's a police officer or an SRO. So I want to make sure you're aware of that also. And so we've brought this to you tonight. I'm going to have Mr. Bond, or actually not Mr. Bond, right? We're going to have Mr. Chavez and Mr. Bond both come up. They can add on to what I have, some basic information I provided you, so that you have all the information necessary to decide whether there's something you want to move towards, or if you need some more information or whatever it might be, and how you want us to proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Hyatt. Board Vice President, Mr. Mortensen, board members, members of the audience, and Mr. Hyatt. Mr. Hyatt has covered a lot of the information that we have, but there's a number of organizations that we work with. Palms and Associates is our insurance broker through New Mexico Public School Insurance Authority. And so we've contacted both of those. They have mandatory standards that they work with to arm someone in schools. And so, as Mr. Hyatt said, their first option is SROs. It's what they would like to see. If that is not available, which it's not to us at this point, then the second option is arming security. Security, our company is Red Rock Security. Mr. Matt Hughbanks actually has a license to train his security officers to receive what is called a Level 3 certificate. That would allow them to be armed in schools. Now, there's a number of things that we need to decide whether we want to do, and some of those things would include really what New Mexico School Insurance Authority has said is you need to have a memorandum of understanding or agreement with the company, and so we would have to work with them to get that in place. We do have an RFP with them that tells them what they can do for us at this point. That RFP actually does include the ability to have armed guards at times, and we do that a little bit right now. For example, if there's a threat, we might call them and say we need an armed officer at this school site for a day or two. So that has happened in the past a little bit, but very rarely. The other option, or the other thing that we need in place is a use of force policy, which we do not have. That would basically be an agreement of when force or when one of these security officers or guards could pull out their gun. And so we would need to make sure we had that in place. The other thing that we need to have in place is something that's called a firearms policy. And what that is whether or not a guard would carry the weapon concealed at school sites or out in the open. So it even goes that far, so that we make that decision and work with our security company to do that. And then the last one is the security of liability, or the certificate of liability. PALMS requires at least $1 million liability, and I believe we do already have that with our security firm. So there's a number of things, and we're here to answer any questions. Some of the training requires a lot more classwork or the Level 3 license. Mr. Hughbanks said that I believe the state and national organizations require about 16 additional hours above the Level 2 training, but he makes them go through 40 hours is what he said, because he didn't feel comfortable with the 16-hour training. And he is, again, licensed to do all of that training, so he could provide that. My recommendation, I'm open for questions at this point, because there's probably a lot of questions that could come up. I'm not sure if I can answer them, but that's why Mr. Chavez is here. Mr. Chavez is actually, as you know, he's our hearing officer as well as our athletic director for the district, but he's also the chair of our safety and security team here in central office and across the district. So he actually knows a little more in depth some of the things that are, go along with this. But with all of the threats across the nation, there are many places that are concerned about this. We did talk to the insurance authority with the state, and at this point, there is not a school district in the state that has armed security. There are many of them that have SROs, and there are also a handful that are arming school personnel. In the more rural districts where they don't have security services, and it is a long ways to an officer. So any questions myself or Mr. Chavez hopefully could answer, or we could get an answer for you.
I have a quick question.
All right.
Myself. You mentioned a couple times a policy. Do you mean policy, or do you need to make sure that's part of the MOA?
Did I say policy? There
Yeah.
are mandatory standards is what NIMSTA calls them.
Okay, I just want to make sure. From
Yes.
what I understood in communication with the insurance companies, that there has to be an agreement between us and the security company on those areas that you discussed, not specifically a board policy. Okay, I just want to make sure that there's clarification.
Yeah, and what the insurance authority said, and they actually used the word policy, that there needed to be a use of force policy.
Between what the
I
security
actually
company is
would have to
agreeing
check on
Okay.
that, because that's the word that the insurance authority used.
Okay.
Was a policy about use of firearms and use of force. So I would have to clarify that with them, because yeah, policy means it's really board policy.
Yeah, so I want to make sure that that's clarified, because that's two
Okay,
different
that's something
meanings.
I would have to ask them again. I'd call and talk to them. Any other questions for us?
I have some questions.
Fun. I might turn this over to Mr. Chavez if you're asking questions.
Oh, that'd be good. I thought he was there just for arm candy. My question, I think I can safely speak for the board to say that we are ultimately very, very concerned about the safety of our students, and especially out in the rural areas. With that said, I mean, we may have to be kind of creative with some of the solutions that we have. Is there any wiggle room with any of the policies with the Navajo Nation? Do they have any suggestions of any guidance that they think would work good against an armed assailant, or do they have anything like that at all that we could fall back on as guidance?
Can I answer that first really quickly before I forget my train of thought? Mr. Mortensen, our legal counsel is also working with Central Consolidated, and what he mentioned to us is that they only allow an SRO, as I mentioned before, so that's the preferred way in which we would secure a school in that respect. But as far as anything else, that would take the changing of the law, and so that's going to take legislation that have to go through the Navajo Nation before they would allow, if approved, that would allow anybody else to carry. So there is no wiggle room with respect to the law that's on the Navajo Nation, or it being our schools on leased property. That helps. Maybe Mr. Chavez can answer some more.
No, you nailed it right on the head. So we actually attended a day-long session with the Navajo Nation Police, all the area schools, and the basic consensus was right now it is illegal for anyone other than a Navajo Nation police officer or law enforcement to carry anywhere on any of the public lands. So until legislation is passed, it's a no for any schools that lie on reservation land.
There is, I don't know what they call it, cross-jurisdiction or
Cross-jurisdictional, where the state police could actually come in, or the
thank you.
FBI.
So there is that. I mean, it's just one added little piece, is that they do allow, if there's something happens in, let's say, one of our schools, then the county police or any police, law enforcement can go on. I think it's county. There's cross-jurisdiction. I can't remember what it's called.
Cross-commission.
Cross-commission. And so that is another piece to the puzzle. There is some level of extra added security. It just still takes time. I think the fastest response time, I think we have like through, is about 13 minutes.
So
County sheriff.
I kind of talked to my council delegate about this, Mr. Yazzie, and I think one of the things that is going to take a major change in our nation, the Navajo Nation, is the election that's happening at this point. And that we're ready to change leadership, and I don't know, what their platform will be on this issue, not only as the Navajo Nation presidency, but also in our council. Just to name one very important figure that we work a lot with our district is Jonathan Hale, and he's not running this year. He's not going to be running, he won't be in council again. He was the chair of the Health and Education and Human Services Committee. So that's a big part that will change. But I think having our council changing and also our presidency changing, I think that's going to be a major factor into what legislation Mr. Honorable Council Delegate Edmund Yazzie will be looking at to see if there's something that if they can assist us with. I know if we're talking about SROs and them having to be tribal cops, I don't know if we can look at cost share in those areas with them, because maybe that would be something that would be beneficial in both areas that we could help with salary-wise. Maybe we can bring that to the table. I don't know. Those are just some of my thoughts, and maybe even the housing or something that we can assist to make it a little more juicier, that we can kind of add to that discussion. But I think those are the two major factors, is our new presidency and our new council. So I think, I don't know if I could help us with any legislation that's been happening at Navajo Nation that you've heard of in the Navajo Nation.
Thank you. Go ahead. Thank you. I appreciate it. Mr. Hyatt, I'm at a loss here as to what our choices are on the agenda, what the action item might look like. I mean, it sounds like it's impossible to approve any armed security guards district-wide, or if we're just talking about in the city schools, it might make sense, fellow board members, to hold off on some action on this until we have a little bit more information and or at least some choices for us to make. I'm all for the safety of students, if it means arming folks or whatever. But we're a board, and we have to act together, and we have to act within the constraints of the law, the laws of the land.
Mr. Mortensen, thank you for that. I also agree with you. I think that these policies I think I would like to see the policies that are recommended, the kind of training the level 3 is, even review, kind of seeing a tentative MOA with Red Rock, and having those in place. I really don't agree with the securing our teachers, or letting our teachers carry weapons, but I think having the other two options on the table for discussion, and seeing how we can kind of look at the policy, look at the MOA, and seeing maybe one comment my brother had here earlier was maybe even doing a survey throughout our district to see how our parents feel. And I think the other question I had was, but I think you kind of answered this, Mr. Bond, was how many schools in New Mexico have armed security? And you said
There are none that are using a security firm to do that, according to NMSHA.
Yeah, there's SROs, and there's currently arming teachers in some districts. Staff.
Yeah, and I don't know, when we say arming teachers, I don't know if we're talking, I'm betting that they appointed one person to be at a smaller school or something, but I'm sure it's not just, all right, all your teachers are armed.
I'm assuming
I'm sure
they're
there's something.
requiring the same type of training that these security officers would be required, like a level 3 or whatever type of training.
So I don't know if I'm opening a can, but so state law, because this has been a discussion ever since, unfortunately, it's become more common now, shootings in the schools. State law is that the superintendent has the authority to delegate any staff member to carry on school grounds. That being said, like Mr. Bond said, it's not, okay, teachers at this school can carry. It would have to be legally done with documentation, provide proof of the training and all those type of things. It is rare. It's more for the very rural school districts that do have a slow response time, so it's very uncommon.
And really, the school insurance authority, what they would like to see is the liability taken off of them, either through SROs or the security firm. And so that's why they prefer those two. If it is school personnel that is armed, then they have the liability, the insurance company does. And so they would really, that's their third option. They really don't want to go there if at all possible.
We have schools in our district that are as rural as anywhere in the state, but if the Navajo Nation won't allow armed security guards, whether they're guards or teachers or whatever, then the point is moot. And so really, I mean, we're talking about waiting to see what happens with the with the tribal legislation and the new election, or looking into SROs, in our rural areas.
Yeah, I mean, I believe you're correct. The only schools that we have that are not on tribal land that are secondary schools, because that's the only place we have security guards, I believe is Rama High School, and then the schools here in town. Everything else that are secondary schools are on tribal land. So there's the 2 high schools here, the 3 middle schools here, and I believe Rama High School is the only other school that is not on tribal land, that are secondary schools.
so. These armed security guards would only be at the secondary schools?
Right now, we only have security at secondary schools. Every now and then we will have, if there's an incident at an elementary school, we will hire someone to come in for a while. But yeah, there are not normally security at our elementary schools at this point.
There's security in every community. So.
Okay, so, and the other question I had was, maybe we can also get a report on how much this will cost. Training, SROs, I don't know why that's so hard for me to say, SROs, the training costs, and if that includes uniform, if that includes pay, salary, and weapons, or how much of that would we need to delegate funding for, I think would be my other request to include in this MOA and policies that will be coming up.
So currently there would be no additional cost according to the way the MOU or the MOA is written right now. Well, it's an RFP now, but we would want to reword that into an MOA. The contract that we have with the security, the cost we pay, regardless of whether a guard is armed or not, remains the same. We're paying a level 3 base rate for those security guards. So anyone that is in a supervisory position, they're already receiving that amount. As far as the training and stuff, that all comes within what Red Rock Security has contracted with their individual employees. Any type of carrying licenses, whether concealed or licensed through the New Mexico Public Education Department, those are all private licenses. So it's all individual. Again, currently there would be no cost to the district for those type of services. That could change in the future. As far as SROs, I know that the questions that always came up in the past when we did work with Gallup Police Department or the Sheriff's Department was if we did take over those type of responsibilities, we would also have to inherit things like insurance, retirement, and those type of things, which is why the cost usually went directly through the department, and they would just assign those officers to a school. So there'd be a lot of things that we need to work out with that.
One of the other options that the insurance authority talked to us about was, I don't know if you've heard of CES, but they're a contract service for the state. And basically they are looking at trying to provide that service to schools. And what they would do is they would hire retired officers, and then we would pay a fee, but they would take care of all of those other sorts of things, the liability, the insurance, you know, the uniforms and things like that. But there would be a cost if we went through CES to do that.
We're still only talking about the schools that are on non-tribal lands, right? Right.
Mm-hmm.
What does the law, the tribal law, does it include? I mean, is it only for like, deadly weapons, or does it include things like, you know, pepper spray or like beanbag shotguns or tasers or things like that?
So any non-lethal would be considered non-firearm. However, again, there's individual things. Security guards have to be licensed or certified, even in non-lethal. So there's different type of things.
I mean, those are certainly options that should be explored as non-lethal type things.
That's a great question. So we don't need tribal approval for non-lethal.
The problem is most non-lethal, let's say, for example, and I'm no weapons expert by any means, but from the trainings that I've been through, and I've been working with the SWAT team and a lot of the law enforcement agencies for a long time now, is that the reality is if we had a guard, let's say, armed with a non-lethal, it would be a shotgun, a beanbag shotgun, or a taser. You're limited to one shot, or you know, at the most 3 or 4. If there was a situation with an active shooter, it would be, even the law enforcement had gone in and said, when you have non-lethal in an emergency or an active killer situation, because they don't call them active shooters anymore, active killer, you're way behind the 8 ball.
So, but I think that would be better than nothing, though, right? I mean, until we get buy-in from our tribe, maybe that's something that we can kind of look at for now, just to have. I mean, a student or parent or anybody that is crazy enough to go in our schools see something that looks like a shotgun, or like there's some security is already less likely to come in and do anything because they know that there might be armed security guards.
Absolutely. I'm all about preventative measures, and if we could park fake cop cars in front of every school or have people walking around with fake badges, anything that we could do to try to prevent these things, I absolutely agree 100%. I also ask you to consider, while we are in works or waiting on legislation from the Navajo Nation, do we want to not make the decision for any of the other schools that would be able to provide those type of services? You know what I'm saying? Do we want to not give those opportunities to provide that safety for the students who would benefit from those, making a decision on a whole, or do we want to do what we can to take measures as necessary, because it is unfortunate. And you know, regardless of how many of these safety trainings I go to, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. We have had guns found. Last year we had 2 firearms found in Gallup McKinley County schools. So, you know, we just being as proactive as we can, and still trying to appease everyone. I think, you know, we take all those into consideration.
And my last comment is, I know that you stated that these are just for the secondary schools, but how many reports and news reports have we heard of shooters going into the elementary schools? And I think we should, you know, I mean, we need to cover them as much as we do our secondary schools and have security for them, because, I mean, I just feel, you know, I don't know, I know teenagers and the active shooters are sometimes the high school students, but how many are not? And they go into the elementary school and try to hurt our younger students.
Absolutely. And on a brighter note, what I can say is that Mr. Hyatt has really pushed, and the school safety, we've revamped probably 500% in just the last year, in getting things like the cameras increased, getting the air horns on all the buses, doing mandatory lockdown drills, making sure that all staff members are on the same page when it comes to how to deal with active shooters or lockdowns or anything of that nature. So again, those preventative measures that we've been putting in place, and we really do focus a lot on the elementary. I know there's a lot of controversy coming up. People are saying, you know, well, we're not allowed to walk our kids this, that, and the other. We're not trying to deny parents the right to be able to be involved in their students' education, but it's unfortunate that we do have to take these necessary measures. And just like you said, Ms. Manuelito, you know, elementaries are by no means immune from any of these problems, and a lot of times it is the adults that make that situation worse.
Board members, do we have an action item? What do we want to do?
For me personally, I think I would just appreciate this as a discussion for now, and then see what more we can look at for the MOU, the policies, and I think we need to also, I know that maybe this is a question that we can propose to our Navajo Nation 2 candidates that are running, to see how they feel about armed security guards in our schools, and if they would support legislation or something. I mean, I think that would be an interesting question.
I like the idea of the survey. I
Yeah,
mean, these are you know, big, gigantic voting public, and you know, with the survey, it'd be interesting to see. Mr. Chavez and Mr. Bond, will you, you know, maybe for the next board meeting or the one after that, maybe prepare some options for us, give us some options, some specific options, and what it would look like, and that way we have, you know, we have some choices, and we can actually see this action item is fairly broad, and especially with the limitations that we have, you know, maybe it would make sense to, you know, arm folks with lethal and non-lethal, or, you know, or whatever, but some options and what it would look like, what it's going to cost, and the timeline of each of them.
We will do that.
I think I would just like to know, I mean, I think you heard from Mr. Mortensen and myself that we don't want, and I would like to ask Mr. Hyatt about his opinion on staff being armed. Is that, I mean, I don't agree with that. I don't know, but should that even be an option within this discussion, or the work that the 2 gentlemen will be doing to have staff armed?
My opinion, I stated briefly that I don't think that's necessarily a first option, or a second or third or fourth or fifth or sixth, because I don't want to place that burden on staff. That doesn't mean that could potentially be the only option, maybe. This action item is really, I mean, it could have been a discussion item, but just in case you wanted to act, we put it as an action item. Because this is such a controversial topic, this is a decision I could literally make right now on my own without your approval. But I feel that we need to all be on the same page with respect to this topic and how we want to move forward. I'm not necessarily opposed to anything, but I want to make sure that we're all on the same page of what we feel is best, along with the research and along with experts in our communities. And from what we have gathered thus far, with what our options are, they're limited. SROs are probably not an option right now. Arming teachers is probably not a road that we want to go down. Arming security guards is an option, but only for a portion of our schools. So I didn't want to delay this. I wanted the discussion to continue to happen, and that's why it's an action item today, so that we can keep this conversation going until you feel comfortable, and us all moving forward, whatever option it is that we choose. It's unfortunate, as Mr. Chavez mentioned, but I believe it is a necessary conversation. And again, this isn't the only deterrent that we've looked at. We've talked about what our security measures are in the district. This is just one of the many things that we're looking at, our options. So I don't want to make this about whether students are safe only if we arm security or not. Again, there's a host of other things that we've been doing, as Mr. Chavez mentioned, to provide more a deterrent and more safety for our students in our schools, county, city, wherever.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So can I give a suggestion?
Yes, please.
Since we do have an action item, it sounds like as an option for a motion would be approval of arming security guards, maybe with part of that motion to continue to dig into your questions and a more of a detailed plan, as you suggested, Mr. Mortensen.
I think that sounds fine. Now, you said that we're already paying for these level 3 security guards, right? I mean, they're already
we
being
currently
paid for.
have security guards, and we pay them. It doesn't matter. What would happen, let's say you had voted tonight, or you vote tonight to arm security guards. What would literally happen is the security company already has 10% of their guards that can be armed, and if they're not already in school, then they would be placed in the school and swapped out with a security guard they can't carry, and there would be no cost to the district. Well, it's just a level of training issue.
Board members, it might make sense to, for an action item, something to the effect of approval for arming security guards where it's legal, and where it's not legal, looking at creative solutions and trying to come up with a solution to protect those students as well. I think we have a responsibility to protect students where we can and when we have the option.
Just to comment, the Red Rock security firm call those folks, I believe, roving supervisors. And so we already pay for a number of roving supervisors across the district. But really we're paying for a level 3 security guard when we do that. So yeah, there would be no cost because there's enough of those that we are already paying for to handle whatever we might need to arm people.
And so we're strictly talking about, I guess, where it's legal.
I would really like to, I think I would really like to table this because I want to see those policies in the MOA, because how are we going to enforce something if we don't even have those in place first? Then we can approve the armed security guards, because I don't want to approve the armed security guards if we don't even have the policies that need to be in place in the MOA with Red Rock. It seems like we're kind of jumping the gun. Sorry. We're not, I think we should do this first and then put it back on the agenda for the approval.
I think that makes sense, Ms. Manuelito. Get those policies, let's cook it a little bit more, put it in the crock pot and bring it to the next board meeting and so we can see what this looks like. Does that sound right?
Yeah, so my motion would be to table until we see the MOA with Red Rock, the policies that were mentioned, and the liability for, we already know about the liability in place. Mr. Mortensen.
Okay. We have a motion on the table. Joan, roll call, please.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Shaw.
Joan, roll call, please.
Mr. Shaw.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes. It's 8:22, we're adjourned.